To add on to your last point about them copying, I just want to point out how particular they were in copying these manuscripts and the process they would go through, and how amazing it was. They would have these scribes that would take these manuscripts and copy them, and that was their job, just to copy those manuscripts. And when they copied it, when they were done copying, they would take the original manuscript, they would take their copy, and they would count the words to the middle of the Bible or their copies. And if that word matched, then they knew they had the right copy. If that word did not match, then they would throw out the copy because it was tainted, it wasn't right. And so that's how particular they were with these copies, and that's further proof that what we have today, the copies we have today, the translation we have today, really is true to the original text and is valid and is something we can trust in and put our faith in, that it is truly from the original text.
You think about the reality that you have over 40 different authors, yet you see uniformity. You see agreement in what 40 different individuals wrote over a time period of thousands of years. And we can go back, even though we don't have the actual parchment that Paul would have written on, we don't have the actual parchment that Peter would have written on, there are thousands and thousands and thousands of copies that we can do the literary analysis of and see, look at the agreement. And that evidence alone shows us that it wasn't 40 individuals with different mindsets, but there was one mind behind the writing and the inspiration of the scriptures, and that was God. And we see that throughout the Old Testament and the writings of Moses, that Moses wrote all the words of the Lord. It makes that declaration, and because of that declaration, we can criticize that, we can examine that, and let the evidence lead us to the conclusion that we can trust in what the Bible is to us today.
And by criticize, you mean be critical in a critical analysis sort of way.
Yes.
Obviously.
Well, that's extremely important to me, because that's never been seen before. That type of consistency over time periods and authors, that's a powerful evidence for Scripture. And Jacob, to your point on the work of the scribes, that's an argument that you hear a lot of times from people is, how can we trust that it's not just been distorted? You know, over all the years and translations and different languages, and how can we really be confident that what we're reading in the 21st century is the same thing?
I'd like to remind us also, and I think we have a tendency to forget it in our current culture, we've had a lot of change in the last 100 years, especially in the United States. We've had a ton in technology, that type of thing. I remember a time, and I'm not that old, but I remember a time that my wife and I, we were married, been married for years, did not have a cell phone. Cell phones did not exist. There was no such thing as a cell phone. And now everyone has a cell phone. I think we think in terms a lot of times about a Xerox copier, that they've just always existed. They haven't always existed. And we're talking about written by multiple authors over years and periods of time, copied with great detail in a period of time that none of this technology existed. They were not calling each other. They lived thousands, hundreds of miles apart from one another, and they didn't have the ability to call across generational periods of time, and their ability to doc, or what's the word I'm looking for, their ability to catalog and hold and to store this information. It was not the computer age. It's not the age we live in today. And people need to recognize how awesome those points are, because they were doing it at a time. There was no technology. This was not an information age. This was being done at a period of time that all those things were very limited.